Chapter 5. The Monolith. Long had he awaited this day. Some may say too long, but the pleasures of the divine right were simply incomparable to anything Earth might offer. The flesh, of course, was weak, much too weak to properly perform the needed sacrifices, so he had upgraded his flesh. For hours, then days, then weeks, then months, eventually years, he had sat hunched over his computer screen. His friends had joked that he looked like Gollum. That was when he'd still had friends. They had joked like that anyways. His neck became more and more craned, his skin more and more pale, the bags under his eyes darkened more and more. But he had seen the glory, and he would not be dissuaded. He knew his mission in life, a feat not many men could claim. He typed until his fingers went numb. When his body began to fail him, he would simply put a little crystal into the bowl and spark his lighter until it was a fine mist he could inhale. Once feeling was restored, he began again. Had he listened to the rest of the people guided by paper-thin ambitions, he would have taken some sort of antipsychotic meds and gone to rehab. But the Grand Wizard refused. For 30 years he slaved like this, drawing blueprints, writing code, ordering parts according to his specifications, all done from the comfort of a small, abandoned shed in the Louisiana bayou, stealing power from the neighbors which knew not of his presence. When funds were low, he stole that too. He ate bugs, rats, squirrels, and bats. But somehow, through it all, he survived. He had little regard for his own body throughout the process, given that he would soon be transcending it. Bits of scrap metal were combined with flesh, not his own flesh, of course. Midnight visits to the graveyard got him most of what he had needed, but when fresh corpses ran in short supply, he made them. Not all of the flesh was needed, but the remainder was a delicacy amongst his diet. His teeth had at some point become too rotted to properly masticate the meat, at which point he had simply stolen a blender. After this process, his new body had become available. The day he had set the brain inside the body, he had masturbated one last time, hoping he would remember the sensation which had gotten him through so many difficult times in his life. Then he had powered his new body on. His every last memory was stored on its hard drive, but this was the new and improved version of himself. This was the version that could partake in the holy rite of communion. And so, as the luminescent eyes powered on, the Grand Wizard took out the rusted revolver from the drawer of his shabby computer desk. The barrel was placed firmly against his temple, and the trigger pulled. Blood dripped down the wall of his shack, the small droplets racing to see who could stain the dirt floor first and begin to return his brains to the earth. And yet, he lived on. The new body was fantastic, and through it he felt as though there was nothing he could not accomplish, for indeed there was not. They now talked directly into his mind, tweaking it to their liking, changing the code, whispering lines of programming mortal men would have never thought of given 70 million eternities to uncover. His journey was arduous, traveling with his new body through freezing cold, scorching heat, underwater. He visited cities and temples which had names long since forgotten, and civilizations which had never had names. He delved deep into spaces the powers that be bid the populations stay far away from, and places those powers did not know existed. And eventually, through all his searching, all his wandering, all his pain, his suffering, his misery, the ritual was completed. Now, as the mechanic stared into the cold, dead eyes of the Grand Wizard, he understood his whole life story in a millisecond. Disgust crept into his body, seeping from his bones and flesh, the feeling of pure revulsion. It was as if his skin was forced to watch the corpse of a gorgeous woman decompose. It was a grotesque symphony of utter devotion to an ideal. He became lost in the glowing red eyes of the Grand Wizard, a ship set on the stormy seas of the figure's red robes. The darkness around him, the monolith on which he sat, it utterly swallowed all light so one could hardly see anything. He was the utter rejection of all human ideals of the divine. He was the soul of those forgotten gods programmed into a perfect body made from waste. He held the keys to the abyss, aside from which there was no heaven. There was no defeating him. There was no victory to be had, not even a battle to be fought. All there was left to do was surrender to the divine will. He was pulled from his vision violently and suddenly, yet he remained detached from reality. His body stumbled from the room on autopilot. Something loud pierced his eardrums. There was a blinding flash, and he was falling. The obelisk. His god. His master. No. It was more than that. That old being, he missed it already. What were they doing? Why were these men leaving it behind? Didn't they see how futile the whole thing was? Or perhaps it was a concept they simply couldn't wrap their heads around, that the gulf between humanity and these old gods now revived was so large, one's mind could not even hope to scratch the surface of their knowledge. The mechanic blinked. What had he been thinking again? All he could recall now were feelings. He shuddered and glanced around slowly. Only two others remained, one of which was frantically pulling the mechanic along. He understood not why the preservation of his life was so paramount to this man, nor how his legs managed to move seemingly on their own. Behind him was a man dressed nicely, but covered in blood. He'd likely been on the ship for vacation. Had that been what the spaceship was for? It was all so long ago, that life as a mechanic, when he was not the sole witness to the birthing of a god. The mechanic screamed within what was left of himself.
Hey guys, how's it going? This has been Monolith, written by Warren Walker and also read by me, Warren Walker. Music by Carl Casey. Don't really have much to update this week. That's part of the reason the last video didn't have this little outro blip at the end of it. We're starting to get to the point where this is the last episode I recorded on my old mic, so audio quality might be a little bit different in the coming episode. I recorded Wizard's Tower on my new mic, so that's kind of a reflection. I'm still trying to mess with the audio settings and get it down. I'm sure you noticed the outro mic quality and mic quality for the video in general is severely different. Otherwise, nothing much really going on in life. I recorded the first 5 episodes like months ago, and I think just listening to this one, I might have been a little bit sick for it, but I mean, it wasn't so egregious that, I was just going to scrap the whole thing. Not that the episodes are particularly long in the first place, but hey. So, I've got more stuff in the works, like Wizard's Tower coming up. I've got one pretty much all the way written, but I'm doing it by dirtbagging on my phone at work and writing it there. Probably as soon as I'm done recording this segment right here and I go to upload this video, I'm going to immediately start writing something else kind of in that vein. Or no, scratch that. I actually decided tonight I'm going to start. I've got something kind of along the lines of the Monolith that I wanted to start writing. So I'll probably tackle that. In between, I just finished the second draft of my new novel that I don't have a name for yet. Haven't even thought one up if I wanted to give it to you. And probably next draft, I'm going to say third draft, a few of you are going to get beta copies. I've talked to a few of you about getting them already. There goes my microwave with my fucking ramen soup. And those of you I haven't talked to about it, you probably will get a talking to about it. So it's a little bit more dark fantasy. It's a little bit more, I don't know that I've really pushed out anything in that vein quite yet. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. Alrighty, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to me kind of ramble on here at the end. Good night, and God bless.